you have now a very recent thing happening. A young lad that we all know, Humza Yousaf. He, through his political career, is now the first minister of Scotland. Now, and there is heavy criticism on why, while he is advocating the rights of a community which Muslims don't necessarily agree with, and just this aspect, and he's not wholeheartedly acceptable figure. It's not something I would have liked that his victory, or his not victory, his taking the office should be rejoiced. He's a Muslim, but that never happened. It wasn't unanimous. He was more criticized in Muslim community than he was anywhere else. How do you see this in the backdrop of Tadarruj? Is it how Muslims have failed to understand the concept of Tadarruj?
So I think, it's a touchy topic. I don't want to go into it, but I think last night I was bombarded with messages, and I'm not somebody that people bombard with messages. People are very wary of sending me anything because they know I'll be very, very upset with them. But last night I got so many messages, and the first thing was actually a video. So I actually decided to watch this video of a person. So it started off with this lion's face, and then this person, YouTuber, basically making takfir, saying that Humza Yousaf is not just saying it, he was barking it. It was quite ferocious. And I was watching it and I was thinking, and I then looked at the numbers of people that viewed it, and then I looked at some of the comments, and I thought, well, there is a community there that doesn't understand Tadarruj, and is at the kind of infancy of Islamic literacy. And himself, I'm just going to say it for what it is, illiterate in the Islamic. If he's doing takfir of disowning or taking a person out of the fold of Islam, he needs to know the process through which that takes place, which is qada, and there's certain rules and certain processes that take place. And then I listened to actually the thing that he mentioned was the reason why, Humza Yousaf, who's now the First Minister of Scotland, as you said, is a kafir, is that he answered a question which is, he was asked, I watched the whole clip actually 3 or 4 times, and my own conclusion of it is that he made an unintentional blunder, because what I got from it is that he said that I've said 20 times, 25 times the same thing. And he said, no, but he's never said that in public. This is the only time he's ever said it, or conceived to have said something. It's been construed as he said, gay marriage or gay sex is not a sin. I don't think if I was sitting as a qadi on that case, I wouldn't say that he has a case to answer if he says, look, that was an inadvertent mistake. The thing is, as a politician, you have to realize that you have to be prepared, and you have to understand the messaging that you give out, and it should be very, very clear. And in a sense, he was giving mixed messages in the interview, and he was saying, I can't change what's in religious text. Was he saying that he wants to change religious text? I don't think he was. Do I think he was convinced and intentionally saying that gay sex is not a sin? I don't think he wanted to broach the topic. It was the way that the interviewer, interviewers are famous. If you've ever done live TV, I did Big Question many times, and Nicky Campbell always just try and trap me. And it's a way you have to be able to engage with the question and take it to where you want it. But the interesting is that the community doesn't realize that this person, I know him, at a distance, not very closely, but over, one of the presidents of the Gumsa Muslim Students Association, active in the anti-war coalition, a very active Muslim through his youth, active in Muslim youth work, practicing, everything that I know, I've heard about him from a very well-known family in Glasgow as well, very religious, very kind of respected, you understand? So it did shock me that people can be taken in this kind of storm of controversy, which is again in the internet age, explodes into this kind of unabased kind of madness. It's interesting that we lose sight of a number of things. The first thing, he's a politician, he's not a scholar. Now, even if he said something that is known to be unacceptable in the Islamic faith, let's just say that, why do we have to listen to him? Do you listen to him or do you listen to a scholar? And one of the aspects of this is also the fact that religious voices and scholars cannot really complain about anything else if they have not been, at the forefront of these discussions in the first place. Because what his position, I know this, I spoke to him, this was around about 2014 when the gay marriage bill was coming in, and myself and Maulana Habib Rahman actually went to Scottish Parliament to meet the then Justice Minister about this issue, about the whole issue of making marriage a shared term between gay couples and heterosexual couples. And he said, look, the issue for me is a wider question, which is, unless you secure rights for all minorities, we as a Muslim minority will not have any rights. And so at that point, I think he had a point. And I think at that point, minorities generally, they were roughly at the same place in terms of prejudice, in terms of hate crime, in terms of pressures on them and being sidelined from communities. I think there is a case that if Muslims want to live in this society, and they are here and they've not left, our grandparents and great-grandparents came and they intended to leave but didn't leave. For most of people that are kind of from a South Asian context, the fact that they've stayed and there's actually nowhere they can go means that you have to establish yourself here. And now the tadarruj discussion is that, do you then disengage with politics? So if you're saying that, then do not go to your, then insist that the people you go to will be people who rule and legislate based upon their own interests, not sometimes your interests as a minority. To have a voice there that understands the Muslim position, I think, is something that we ignore at our peril as a community. Leave aside the religious aspect of this, and he's not a Khalifa. I mean, the funny thing is, like, Muslims would have wanted, I know there's people, because there's people there, like, quite a clownish position, but he's a Muslim, he's become the first minister of Scotland, he should declare a khilafah or something. There is people as naive as that in our community, not a minority, a majority, that he should call for implementation of some kind of Islamic ruling or aspects of Islamic ruling. But his own opinion, I mean, about legislation.
No, are we saying that a Muslim politician, if he holds the majority view of the prevalent view on morality, whatever that may be, should not be criticized?
No, I'm saying that if his messaging is consistent, what I know from the past is that he said that he doesn't allow his own specific morality to affect how he legislates. In other words, to understand what he's saying, you have to understand how politics works. If I give a fatwa, you have to understand how fiqh works. You have to understand how the lobby groups work. You have to understand how pressure groups, you have to understand how the committee system works in politics. And I know himself, he mentioned this to me many times, that if Muslims are serious about this, they can help Muslim, let's say Muslim politicians by employing people that are lobbying in parliament day in, day out. If they really want to help and not put people into a situation where they have no other option except to go with the lowest common denominator, let's just say, they have to put that effort and they have to put the funding in. They don't. I mean, at that point, the Muslim community widely, and I'll say scholars, Muslim national organizations, umbrella organizations, have no right to, scapegoat somebody if they themselves have failed. I'm talking about activists, I'm talking about politicians, I'm talking about scholars, I'm talking about imams, I'm talking about umbrella organizations, all of which have failed, and all of a sudden they wake up between eating their biryani and then they start to say, well, we need to lynch this person in public. And my issue is that it shows a lack of, if you're doing a video that's not showing fortitude, that's just showing cowardice. I mean, anyone can got a camera here, I can do videos every day. But the issue is, in the real world, and if you know your Islamic history, you'll know exactly what I mean. In Islamic civilization, for fiqh, there's terms, qanun is a term for law. There's sharia, there is huquq, there's all these terms that relate to how law was applied because of the situations which sometimes you couldn't help but legislate outside the realm of Islamic law because of the local situation. And the Ottoman Empire is very famous. Suleiman the Magnificent, that and Ertugrul, who everyone loves to watch, and Uthman, his son, and all the Ottoman Empire, Khalifas, all ruled by rulings which were not legislated in Islamic law specifically, but they were, if you understand that Sharia is much more embracing. You have ideas like urf, local custom, you have ideas like istihsan. Islamic law is an extremely complicated system, and it's there to not to judge in the things that are clear. This is what people don't understand. It's not to judge in the things that are clear. Everyone knows the things that are clear. It's to judge in the things that only specialists will be able to make the right judgment on. And if his judgment politically is that that our best option as a Muslim minority is to throw our hat in with other minorities, I personally think that's the wrong political. I think it's a complete mistake. I think it's a mechanism through which we will be disenfranchised as a community, because the minority, which is the LGBT minority, I've taught a 12-session course on this. I've lectured on this many times. The LGBT lobby will not stop until religious minorities are deprived of their own individual rights, and that'll come out in issues around things like conversion therapy. That'll come out in terms of a parent's right to educate their child in the way that they want to educate. So all these things, I think politicians, and this is including Humza Yousaf, have not factored in, is that at a certain point, and this is, I've done a whole 2 lectures on this actually in 2019 on the ideological foundations of this. They will not remain static at gaining equal rights. They will insist upon oppressing the other minorities in a gradation as well, because there's gradations of minorities.
But seeing that and then trying to engage with and tackle this, there is, you require a lot of wisdom. You require a lot of understanding of the tadarruj. You require focus of where you want to go with your faith, your understanding of Sharia, and what his intent is for a minority group living in the West.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So my disagreement, a very stern disagreement with people like Humza Yousaf and other politicians in that situation, is that they formulated their conviction in all minorities being together, I think, about 10 years ago. The world's moved on. And when I did the course on LGBT issues, I did a whole discussion about the Gay International, for example, like Turkey. Turkey unilaterally left the Istanbul Convention, which was about women's rights, but essentially it was used as a vehicle to push in LGBTQ NGOs into Turkish fabric of society. Now,
there's a comparison between, Turkey, an empire, it was a country, a power, and then here we have individuals like third generation just making some progress and getting into somewhere which is visible, and that's all there is. So maybe even for our community to understand that the comparisons are unfair.
Yes, my point is this: there's inconsistencies in his thinking. That does not justify the attacks on his religious conviction, on him as a person, and on the sacrifice that he has made. Meaning, no, I'm talking about like monetary, whatever. I mean, talking about conviction and sincerity. I know he's completely sincere in what he's doing. Like the fact I have a political difference with him is one amongst many people who have a difference with many other people. That's my analysis. My analysis may be completely wrong. My right as a Muslim scholar is to kind of flag up issues where I think Islamic law and public policy are out of sync, and it's not in our interest in doing certain things. That's separate. That's separate. I think the great tragedy of this whole episode is that a person who was brought up within a very kind of flourishing Muslim household, Muslim community with Muslim friends, and has been active at every single point in the betterment of our community, and has at his core a very clear conviction about bettering society in general and the Muslim community, because they go together, that person is being lynched in public. And people are then just sharing kind of these random YouTubers clips about him not being a Muslim. Like, how, the dangerous thing here is the Prophet said in very sahih is mutawatir hadith, whoever says that a certain person is a kafir, then that is true of one of them. Do you understand? Because that, you take that sword out, the sword of excommunicating somebody, that's going to hit somebody's neck, metaphorically. And it's very and if you share it, you're also partaking in it. So it's very dangerous. This is why tadarruj is very important.
Such a sweet example that Sheikh gave of trying to understand adab. Even cooking a meal is adab. Having ingredients, having the adab of how ingredients will follow the next to make a good meal. And adab is at the core of this. Adab is at the core of how you engage with this episode that Humza Yousaf is now First Minister of Scotland.
Yeah, but the thing is, look, if you want to know the Islamic position on the act, let's just say the act between two people of same sex, you ask a scholar, you don't ask Humza Yousaf. And the thing about the whole interview was that he was asked by and it's actually it's an example of religious persecution. I mean, you're not allowed to ask a person to leave their faith, which essentially he was asking him to do. And the fact that he made a blunder in trying to be, I think, probably trying to give a kind of complex message in a soundbite came out completely wrong. And the reason I'm saying that is because he said it so many times. He's not. So whatever he says many times is that he doesn't allow his religion to affect how he legislates. That's his prerogative. Yeah. As citizens of this country, an elected member of our devolved parliament, that's his right. And if somebody else, and I was speaking to somebody yesterday after Taraweeh, and he said his father's very famous actually in America. He's in his community, he's built like 7 mosques, and they were building another mosque, and then he was sitting amongst, he said the Ammo, he's Egyptian. So, and he said, I was like 21, and I said to my father in the group, I said, why do we need another mosque? And his father looked at him in front of everybody. He said, what have you done?
Exactly.
He said, my father embarrassed me in front, and he says to this day, I'm embarrassed because everyone knows my father embarrassed me in front of everybody. Okay, you don't want to build another mosque. Let's see what you can do. Like these people that say, okay, whatever they're saying, okay, go for it. We'll give you, the next 15 years of your life, having to prioritize how you sacrifice day in, day out, and then have your connection with Allah at the same time. Because the most kind of sad thing about this is that Humza Yousaf obviously has a deep faith in Allah and the Messenger, and to question that for him would be very hurtful. So there's all these aspects that you have to think about, that the people who are so open to talking, and this is why people don't talk in front of me, they always send me kind of through a second person to speak. It's embarrassing because I'll say, well, what are you doing? Leave it to me, leave it to another scholar to discuss on the intricacies of Islamic law on this position. What are you doing? And the answer that comes back is, you're doing nothing. You're reading books and giving lectures, nothing. That's nothing essentially. But what have you built? Like, what have you sacrificed? And essentially that is, when the Prophet is given Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, he's told he's going to have to sacrifice for the long term. 23 years, he doesn't know it, but it's going to be 23 years. It's going to involve heartache. It's going to involve his own family being ripped apart, his own relationships with his wives being ripped apart. It's him being subject to smear campaigns by the munafiqeen. It's going to be him unable to eat because of the Prophet's hair going white. There's chapters that came that turned the Prophet's beard, not his kind of hair. That's a metaphorical thing. It kind of, he said it made him age. Now Allah is allowing that to happen, and it's a test. I mean, if I was to speak to Humza Yousaf, I would say this is a test. You need to rectify your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only you know what that is. And the other aspect is that the community is not just the people that make the noise in the community. Do you understand? So, at all points we make dua for people that have a lot of responsibility. Our scholars and our leaders, we always make dua for them, because if they go right, the whole community goes right, and if they go wrong, the whole community goes wrong. And this is, I think, the whole point of when we're talking about revelation and the importance of it, we always put it at the core of everything, that this is what our revelations tells us, that if the intention and the core of our community is right, it'll be rectified in a good way. If it's not, then obviously, everything goes wrong. And we pray to Allah for tawfiq for the community, and to give it a sense of perspective over, and a lack of superficiality over its religion. And that's very unnerving for me, to see people looking at religion as a very superficial thing and a label that we need to use and promote. Whereas, throughout our history, I mean, if you wanted to, we go through a whole session on the ambiguity of Islamic civilization itself, on everything, even gender. I mean, the discussion in Pakistan is happening about the transgender movement, which is not a transgender, it's actually a specific segment.
Exactly.
How nuanced that is, and they've been given a third gender right. Even that, I think scholars in Pakistan don't understand it, by the way. I'm just saying. But the point is, it's a very complex culture Islamically that we have, civilization. I'm not going to talk about it here, but the relationship between a sheikh and their murid, it was expressed in poetry, which for most people would be, very dodgy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go through it. But the qawalis and the kind of relationship the words being used to express it. We have a very rich civilization, and scholars didn't condemn it. And the problem we have is that we're coming into a postmodern age where we're told to make everything black and white, and everything's not black and white.
Jazakallah khair. Reflections. I think just gone over a bit of over time. At 7:59 is iftar today. Inshallah, we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think, is going to be charity drive, but we'll have Sheikh Ruzwan joining in as well. So until tomorrow, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.